Kickoffs around the corner down on the plains. The 2025 season is upon us for the Auburn Tigers, helping us break it all down and preview the upcoming season for War Eagle. Friend of mine, friend of the show, Mike Gittens of the War Rapport, one of the best in the business when it comes to talking all things Auburn. Mike, what's going on, man? Appreciate you taking the time and excited to chop it up with you.
Man, thanks for having me, Chris. It is almost time for football. We are so close. Open practices, press conferences, all the usual media stuff is going on right now. So I'm excited that talking season is almost over and football season is almost here.
Yeah, finally, man. Kickoff is just around the corner. Mike, if you don't mind, before we talk this 2025 season, I do want to briefly look back at 2024 and just kind of set the scene of how we got to where we are. Because obviously the 2024 season was one of disappointment, right? Year two of the Hugh Freeze era, you go 5-7, 2-6 in conference play. Really frustrating losses against the likes of Cal, against Arkansas, the game that we were obviously at Jordan-Hare. The Oklahoma game, it felt like kind of encapsulated what the entire season was with just the frustrations, if you will. You know, at Missouri was another one. You lose to Vandy. Diego Pavia beats Hugh Freeze yet again. And then another game against Alabama, end of season, where you had opportunities, but the offense held you back. Just talk to me. How do you compartmentalize, Mike, what happened in the 2024 season, and how does all of that play into what is no doubt a pressure-packed upcoming season for Hugh Freeze?
Well, no doubt, 2024 was definitely a disappointing season. Auburn had better talent than their 5-7 record. So there were a lot of eyes were on quarterback. Peyton Thorne struggled at times under that Hugh Freeze's guidance. And there are a lot of questions about whether or not he is the QB whisperer, which Auburn so desperately needs. When you look over the last 25 years, Chris, whenever Auburn has been able to find a solid starting quarterback, they've been in the conversation for championships. I want to take you back to 2004. That Auburn team, Jason Campbell, in his last year, changed the college football landscape. No SEC team would ever be left out of a national title game after 2004 Auburn. A couple of years later, Auburn, 11-win team with Brandon Cox as quarterback. And then you got Cam Newton in 2010, Heisman, undefeated, national championship, Maxwell, every single award you could think of, they won in 2010. And then just a few years later, they're right back in it with Nick Marshall, Jarrett Stidham, great couple seasons on the plains where they were one SEC championship game away from making the college football playoff. And since then, it's been a downhill slide. Bo Nix was supposed to be the guy that kind of the resident son that saved Auburn football. And it wasn't Bo's fault. Gus was not the guy to get him there. But now you're in this and you're going into what could be your fifth straight losing season if Hugh Freeze can't pull it together. We were at media days a couple weeks ago, Chris, and there was a universal and unanimous recognition by the media that the talent levels on the plains are as high as they've ever been. So when you look back at 2024, the base of that talent was there last year. Now you've changed quarterbacks and you've added a couple pieces, but in trying to characterize where Auburn is at versus where they should be this year, what the expectations are going to make it look like Auburn fans are expecting a huge jump. But the truth is, it's not that big a jump from the talent that they had last year to where they should be in year 3. And that should be an 8 or 9 win team at minimum, especially with this schedule. The schedule presents a lot of opportunities in the second half for Auburn to go on a win streak there down the stretch heading into the Iron Bowl. So I think that Hugh Freeze this is a prove-it year for him. He's got to prove to the people who invested millions literally in this roster that he knows what he's doing with those guys on this roster. Is Jackson Arnold going to be the guy? This is the quarterback you asked for. It's the quarterback you got. If he's not successful, they're going to look back and you're not going to be able to scapegoat him. You're not going to be able to scapegoat Jackson Arnold, right? You've got the running backs you want. You definitely have the receiver room you want. And Hugh Freeze said an NFL scout told him recently that 6 guys on the offensive line would receive draftable grades. 6 guys, Chris. If I am to believe that, Auburn should be an 8-win team at the very least this year.
Mike, you mentioned Hugh Freeze. I want to go there first before we dive into this 2025 squad. Entering his third season, obviously. I ask everybody this because I think it's always fascinating. Getting your perspective, Mike, you've got as good a feel, if not better than anybody, on the pulse of the Auburn fan base, what they're discussing, what they're thinking, how they're feeling. So I simply ask you, because we all know that the national chatter, and we were at SEC Media Days, like you mentioned, the hot seat talks, and he's certainly on one of the hottest seats per media, pundits, whatever. What's the overall vibe, Mike, you gather from the fan base when it comes to Hugh Freeze, and just how immense is the pressure on him?
If you asked him this question, which I did, he'd say he doesn't really feel pressure. He understands expectations, and he's okay with expectations, because if there are expectations, it means that they have done something to create expectations from the fans. Now, how did they create expectations? Well, they recruited very well in years 1 and 2. And he said himself coming into the job, and I quote, "If we're not in the top 7 in recruiting by year 3, everybody here is going to be looking for a job." Well, he recruited like his job was on the line, and they got there in year 2. Now you got to prove that you know what you're doing with that talent. So does he feel pressure? I think he feels the expectation, the weight of the expectation. And the expectation is something that he created when he went out and he got Cam Coleman to come here, and he got Perry Thompson to come to the Plains. He got top 10 talent to come here, and there's now the expectations have risen. So you call it pressure, you can call it expectations, you call it what you want. Hugh Freeze has got to win, and I think that's what he feels first and foremost. He knows he's got to win games this year. We just had this conversation on our channel on Sunday on our live show, Chris, about whether 7 wins would be acceptable. Personally, I'm in the camp that I don't care how you get there. 7 wins, completely unacceptable. There is not going to, there's not an injury excuse. There's not my quarterback didn't pan out. No. These are the quarterbacks you picked, right? This is the team you want and you bought and paid for. So if you can't win with them, don't give me, short of like an Oklahoma type situation on offense where their whole receiver room got hurt and things that you don't normally see in college football. Like that amount of injuries is very anomalous. Like that doesn't happen very often. Short of that, I don't think there's going to be an acceptable excuse for going 5-7. I'm sorry, 7-5. I don't. Not with this schedule, not with this team. Win 8 games. I know he feels that pressure. And for what it's worth, I think he's been told. This is not coming from any sources. I think he's been told, if you don't win 8 games, we're going to have to talk about some things at the end of the year. So Hugh Freeze knows it. He understands. You don't take a job like Auburn and not know that by year 3, if your team isn't clearly showing improvement, that the heat's going to be on you. That seat is hot, Chris. It's burning up. It's coals in the cushions hot.
Mike, that being said, this 2025 squad and the squad that'll look to get him off of the hot seat. I want to start on the offensive side because you've already alluded to it. Lots of talent here. Jackson Arnold, the former Oklahoma Sooner, taking over as QB1. Don't forget, by the way, too, you got Deuce Knight behind him, who's already making waves as QB2 in fall camp. You mentioned Cam Coleman leading one of the arguably best wide receiver rooms in the SEC, maybe even the country when it's all said and done. Eric Singleton was a massive pickup from Georgia Tech, and Horatio Fields from Wake Forest. You got 4 starters back on the offensive line. You added Xavier Chaplin from Virginia Tech. You mentioned the strength of that group, 6 guys you said that it sounds like could get NFL draft grades. That's a pretty good sign for that unit. Damari Alston and Darrell Robinson, the UConn transfer, look to fill the void left by Jarquez Hunter's departure. Obviously, other guys in that running back room as well. A lot of names who emerges as that dude, or is it running back room by committee? Going to be interesting to see. And then at tight end, you've got Brandon Frazier back, and then Preston Howard, the Maryland transfer, manning that spot as well. Mike, like you said, on the offensive side, simply put, and I said to you at SEC Media Days, it is very easy to fall in love with this roster. It's easy to fall in love with this side of the football. There's a lot of different ways we could go with this. I feel like a lot of the headlines, though, and a lot of the fingers will be pointing back, of course, at the quarterback, Jackson Arnold. What are you expecting from this offense with a new trigger man and all his weapons around him?
That is a great question, Chris. They have stack the deck around Jackson Arnold when it all comes back to quarterback. Competent quarterback play allows you to expand your offense. If you listen to what Hugh Freeze said a lot of last year after games, it was, we've shrunk the offensive package to what we feel like these guys can do well. And that was pretty disappointing because you had a returning starting quarterback in Peyton Thorne. So to hear, hey, we got to shrink it, we got to shrink it every single week. At some point, Chris, you're like, this is too much shrinkage to have a good time, man. Any more shrinkage, we're not having fun. So now, some boy got to get bigger. Hugh Freeze he's got to be able to run his full package this year. It's not going to be an excuse to not have what he needs to his full offense. So what it's going to boil down to is what percentage of the offense can Jackson Arnold handle? And it's we didn't see a lot of Jackson Arnold this offseason. Think about it. We didn't see him in the spring game. They said he had a hamstring injury. He was anointed the starter before he even stepped foot on the Plains. So that tells me they have zero questions about whether or not he is physically capable. As a matter of fact, Hugh Freeze making headlines recently for saying that he told his defensive coordinator, DJ Durkin, to take it easy on Jackson Arnold in practice because, and I quote Chris, the goal is to make sure that the quarterback leaves practice with confidence. So they don't have any questions about whether or not he's going to be able to perform under pressure. They just want to see him demonstrate an understanding of the concepts that they want to run here. And because you've got your entire receiver room returning with a veteran and adding a veteran guy like Eric Singleton Jr., you've got the running backs return. Both of your star running backs return behind Jarquez Hunter. You've got an offensive line that should be, if they're all draft ready, I don't know how that can. Jackson Arnold should have the time he needs to process and go through his reads. It just boils down to whether or not these guys are going to be able to. Hold on, I'm sorry, I froze. Did I freeze for you?
You are frozen. I think Hugh Freeze hacked the stream, and
oh my goodness, hold on.
We're keeping this in, Mike. We're keeping this in.
Hold on. Let me.
Peyton Thorne threw the stream my way, and it got intercepted, I think. There we go.
Yeah, hold on.
No disrespect to our guy Peyton, by the way. That maybe that was a low blow. I'm sorry to all those that were offended.
Peyton is a friend.
I kid. I promise. It's a joke.
I can't believe that happened. That's crazy. Right in the middle of the stream. Okay.
You're good. You look great, Mike. You look great.
So what it comes down to is it comes down to quarterback. Can you produce high enough play at the quarterback level so that Auburn can score the requisite amount of points to win football games? Go back and look at the schedule, Chris. This Auburn team did not struggle to produce big plays, but they did struggle to score. They struggled in the red zone, and that had a lot to do with quarterback. I'll take you back to fourth down at midfield versus Georgia to start the fourth quarter. And Hugh Freeze calls a play. It goes wrong. Auburn, instead of making it a one-score game, essentially they lose the game on that play. And after, both coach and quarterback are in the press conferences pointing the finger at each other. Hugh Freeze said, I called a halfback dive left. Peyton says, Cap, man, we talked about this in practice. And you can't have that this year if you're Hugh Freeze. You need to be on the same page with your quarterback, because if he's not on the same page with his quarterback, how am I to believe that there is chemistry and synergy between the quarterback and the rest of the team? The coach and core QB aren't even on the same page. So that's something that I think they fixed this offseason, and it should look markedly better. As a matter of fact, it should look markedly better right out of the gate, Chris. Game one at Waco. I've called this game. I think Auburn scores points in this one. I don't think that Baylor defensively has an answer for Cam Coleman and Eric Singleton and Malcolm Simmons. I don't think I have an answer. I tabbed Auburn to win that one 38-21. I think a clear 30 points in this one. And I think the game is pretty much in hand by the end of the third quarter. So Hugh Freeze needs this. He needs to get off to a good start if Auburn is going to hit that 8 total. You can't give up Baylor game one, because I'll tell you what, that opening stretch to his SEC schedule, At Oklahoma, at Texas A&M, Georgia coming to the Plains, that's brutal.
Mhm.
That is brutal. If you beat Baylor, you can go 1-3 in that stretch and be 4-2 headed into the rest of your schedule that sees Missouri, Arkansas, Vanderbilt, Kentucky, Mercer. Auburn could win all 5 of those games.
Mhm.
But if you flop in the first 6 and you end up going 3-3, or God forbid 2-4 in that stretch, I don't know, man. Again, the seat continues to get hot. So on offense, it starts and ends with Jackson Arnold in my book. If they can open it up, I think what you see is Cam Coleman continue to be one of the best, if not the best, wide receiver in college football. And then you'll once those lines back up a little bit, trying to cover all receivers, you're going to see them rip off big chunks of yardage in the run game when he drops back and he hands it off on a draw to Maury Alston, and bam, he's up the field 5-6 yards before he's touched. That's how it has to work for Auburn this year. Offensively, they should be good. Can they execute? That's going to be, I think, the mark of whether this team has matured in a way enough that they can win games.
Mike, let's switch sides of the football to the defense. Certainly that wasn't a problem a season ago. DJ Durkin has done a fantastic job since he got to campus. You look at the personnel, Keldrick Falk leads the defensive front at edge, certainly an all-conference caliber player. Quintrell Jamison-Travis, Malik Blockton also return on the interior defensive line. You've got Kieron Crawford back as an impact player at the buck position. The secondary should be a strength with Caleb Harris, Kyan Lee, Sylvester Smith, Champ Anthony. They're all back. You added Raynon Strader from Miami of Ohio and Rayshawn Pleasant from Tulane to boost the group as well. And then finally, Caleb Wheatland from Maryland is added to boost the linebacking core. He joins Robert Woodyard Jr. and DeMarcus Riddick, who are both back from a season ago, along with a host of others. So I want you to talk about the defense. Like I mentioned, it was 28th nationally a season ago in points allowed per game. They certainly weren't to blame for Auburn's 5-7 record, and looks like they might be a strength again. Mike, what are you expecting from this defense?
Dirty Dirk and the boys. I think they improve on that number this year, 28. I think personally Auburn has a top 15 defense on their hands this season. The secondary is going to be a strength. KN Lee, those guys, they're going to be really, really good. And they'll make plays. They'll turn teams over. At linebacker, you mentioned the transfer Caleb Wheatland. As right now, it looks like he's behind Robert Woodyard. So we're projecting DeMarcus Riddick and Robert Woodyard Jr. to be those starting linebackers. But they've got depth there. Like I know, you rotate a ton of guys on defense to be fresh for the fourth quarter. DJ Durkin, I think, continues that here. The question is, how many down linemen do we see? Keldrick Falk went to media days. He projects to be one of the better edge rushers in the conference this year. He got voted preseason first team all SEC. Auburn has talent everywhere on defense. They made DJ Durkin the second highest paid assistant in college football this offseason for a reason, because they liked what they saw in terms of development. And when you talk to those guys on the defensive side of the ball, they tell you his practice is organized. He's meticulous. He is a detail-oriented guy. So when the game's on the line, DJ Durkin's going to get the details right. And if they can not lose time of possession the way that they did last year in terms of giving the ball back, I think that the defense eats even better. If they can sustain drives offensively and keep the defense off the field at the ends of games, those guys are going to turn up even bigger this year. So defensively, I think Auburn has a top 15 unit. I think that's substantiated. We talked about on our show, we talked about a top 10 list recently released by On3 of defensive coordinators, and DJ Durkin was not anywhere on it. And I'm like, this guy is definitely a top 10 defensive coordinator in college football right now. But the association with losing hurts you when it comes to how people look at the perception of what you do. Nobody ran away from Auburn on the scoreboard last year. Name a team that blew Auburn out. It was the defense that was holding in those games, as you mentioned, where that scoring defense ranked. Georgia, snuck 31 points on Auburn. They lost, 31-14. Texas A&M was the only team to get to the 40s, Chris, and that took 4 OTs. So Auburn is a really, really good team defensively. I think that continues. If they progress, they've got to get better on third down defense. They were otherworldly bad on third down defense last year. So if they can get off the field on third down, you might have a top 10 defense on your hands.
Mike, I know that special teams is often overlooked, but as you and I both know, the margins are so razor thin in the SEC that it plays a factor more than folks would realize, costing you games, winning you games, etc. For the Auburn Tigers, Alex McPherson looks like he's going to come back, resume full-time place-kicking duties after he missed much of the 2024 season with ulcerative colitis, for those who may have forgotten. Hudson, I don't know how to say his last name, Hudson K from Oklahoma State, taking over. Okay, Hudson Cock. All right, taking over at the punting duties. And Jeremiah Cobb back at kickoff return, punt return duties, maybe a little bit up in the air. Mike, overall takeaways on special teams. What are you expecting from this group? Should it be a strength for Auburn?
Well, Hudson Cock is a really good punter. I think they'll be solid there. Alex McPherson, though, when my one-on-one sit down with Hugh Freeze, he thinks missing McPherson cost Auburn 2 games last year. And when you look at it situationally, I'd have to agree with him. It wasn't just about the backup kicker. It was about the lack of faith in the kicking game that caused Auburn to do some things they wouldn't normally do situationally on fourth down. Instead of taking the points, they had to go for it. That turned out to be a disaster more often than not, and it cost them 2 games. He thinks at least 2 games were lost due to kicking. So McPherson coming back is huge for Auburn, as you mentioned. If you're going to navigate an SEC schedule, you've got to win the close ones, and that means that your field goal here, your punt, your shanked punt there away from winning or losing in this league. And McPherson is going to be one of the better kickers. I think he made preseason 3rd team All SEC in his return to the Tigers roster. So, the media even recognizes that he's a weapon. He is an absolute weapon, and Auburn should be solid there as long as they have Alex McPherson. Now, here's the part that I think that might go. Auburn has a lot of options in terms of punt returner. And you talk about those razor thin margins, man, for winning or losing. Having a solid punt return game, I expect Auburn to score some special teams touchdowns this year in meaningful games. I'm not talking about versus Ball State or South Alabama. I'm talking about in the SEC, Chris. Auburn is going to score some points, and they've got a lot of options in terms of very, very athletic guys that they can put back there that can make things happen in the punt return game. So watch out for Malcolm Simmons. Watch out for a lot of these guys that they could put back there on punt return that are dynamic with the football in their hands and could win Auburn a game or 2.
So, Mike, I know this is a stat that doesn't matter quite as much as it used to because we're in the transfer portal era, but 9 total starters are back for Auburn from a season ago, 5 on offense, 4 on defense. I want to jump, Mike, to the schedule because as you and I both know, not all schedules are created equally in the SEC, and certainly Auburn's, like you mentioned, presents a lot of opportunity this season, just like it did a year ago. So you look at the schedule, Auburn, of course, going to get going. You talked about it earlier on that Friday night out in Waco, Texas, against the Baylor Bears. That game is an 8 o'clock Eastern kickoff on Fox. Kind of feels like a primetime appetizer before we get going in the weekend. All eyes will be on that game. You then get Ball State, South Alabama back-to-back in non-conference, and then SEC play begins. And it also begins your road games in this season at Oklahoma, at A&M, going throughout the schedule. You go to Arkansas as well, to Vandy. So, I mean, all in all, a somewhat, you feel like, pretty manageable road slate, if you will, after those first 2 especially. Home games are highlighted by Georgia coming off a bye week. You get Mizzou at home, Alabama to close out the season, and then sandwiched in between those, you've got Kentucky and Mercer the week before Alabama. I know you talked a little bit before, Mike, about the schedule, but I want to echo something you said. It is absolutely favorable. There's no such thing as an easy schedule in the SEC, but, I mean, you couldn't ask for a much more workable slate than what Hugh Freeze and company have in 2025. And now the question is simply, will they take advantage of it?
Yeah, this is the type of schedule that we would see Georgia get. in the SEC East. I mean, look, credit to no knock on Georgia. They won their championships, but you cannot deny that they had at least somewhat of an easier road. Auburn gets the chance to sub out LSU and Ole Miss for Vanderbilt and Kentucky, man. Come on, that's a win. That is an absolute win, Chris. And those are games that Auburn should always win. Now, they beat Kentucky by 14 points last year. Jarquez Hunter ran for over 270 yards in that game. And they famously lost to Vanderbilt. But, you know, and people make a lot of a big deal about Diego Pavia versus Hugh Freeze. Pavia didn't have a good game, man. He had a terrible game. Statistically, go look at the stat sheet, man. What did he do in that game? They won that game 17-7. That game was about Auburn being unable to move the football and score points. Hear me out. That same Diego Pavia put 40 on Bama. Well, they lost. That was an absolute. They had no answer for Diego Pavia. If Auburn had a regular offense when they played Vanderbilt last year, they win that game. I think you see that this year. I don't think he has a great game again this year. I know everyone likes to act like he's the Hugh Freeze slayer, but I'm telling you, he didn't win that game. Auburn lost it. And I foresee this year with this defense getting even better. They're going to have something waiting on Diego Pavia. Now, when you talk about the rest of the schedule, as I mentioned, I think Auburn needs to get off to a good start in year 3. That means beat Baylor. Beat Baylor. Go into Waco and prove that you can win a tough road game. And make no mistake, you know, I cover the Big 12 as well. And it's going to contend for the Big 12 this year. There they are. That conference is wide open, Chris. And Baylor has a lot of talent. Sawyer Robertson is going to be one of the better quarterbacks in the Big 12. He was a 3,000-yard passer last year. I think Auburn limits him, and the secondary makes plays. They're going to pick him off a couple times in that game. I like Auburn in that one. But, you know, if you're Hugh Freeze, if you're a fan, I get why you question. You're nervous about game 1. You're questioning whether he can get it done on the road. What is Hugh Freeze's signature win in his first 2 years? I don't think he has one. I don't think you can claim that he has a signature win. And no, I don't count Texas A&M for your 5th win of the year. Come on, man. Yeah, they don't have a signature win. I think Baylor would be as close to a signature win as you would see going on the road to a Big 12 contender in their house game 1 and coming out with a win would be a great start. And if they can do that, you're going to see a lot of the national media start to recognize Auburn. They're going to jump up that top 25 list really, really quickly. Then you open your SEC schedule in Norman at Oklahoma for the first time ever in college football history. Jackson Arnold, all the storylines in this one. John Mateer, Jackson Arnold,
Hugh Freeze and Brent Venables.
Oh my goodness. Did you hear what Brent Venables had to say about Jackson Arnold at SEC Media Days? He pretty much said, look, man, it wasn't on him. He did all the things he was supposed to do. He could not be more effusive in his praise for Jackson Arnold. So there's a belief there on both sides that Jackson Arnold is a good quarterback. And, you know, Oklahoma was desperate for answers at times last year. I think that causes you to switch out quarterbacks. He got the job back. So at the end of the day, I'm looking at that first game at Oklahoma, and I'm saying, you know, okay, could Auburn steal that one? You beat Baylor, you beat Oklahoma, and then you're at least 2-4 coming out of that first 6-game stretch. If for some reason Auburn can find a way to win 2 of 3 SEC games, remember, Oklahoma, Texas A&M on the road, home against Georgia, and Georgia fans are worried about this game. Let me tell you something. I have been shocked by how realistic the Georgia fans in my life have been. I'm scared that they sound rational when talking about that game last year versus Auburn. All right, look, man, we were worried about that one, and we're worried this year. Georgia fans have come into the comments on our videos, Chris, and said, look, I don't know if that one's going to be a cakewalk for us. And I hope they're right. We'll see if they're right or not. I've got that chalked as an L until further notice. Auburn hasn't won that game since 2017. They've got all the 5 stars they need to win, but could this be a year where Hugh Freeze surprises Georgia a little bit? I think it could. We'll see. They're a different Georgia team. I'm not sure Gunnar Stockton is an upgrade from Carson Beck. And so we'll see where they're at quarterback headed into game 6. And then after Georgia, that's when you've got to make your mark if you're Hugh Freeze. This is where you have to break the cycle of beating Bama and then losing to Vanderbilt. That's something Hugh Freeze has done. Beat Nick Saban, lose to Vanderbilt. No, okay. Beat Nick Saban, beat Alabama by all means, but don't lose to Vanderbilt this year. That's what you have in that next 5-game stretch. If you're Auburn and you clean those next 5, which we admit that's not a stretch, that's not homerism. You should be a better team than Missouri, Arkansas. Josh Pate said take the under at Arkansas at 5.5. Chris, 5.5. So Sam Pittman, dead man. You guys had Sam Pittman as a dead man walking on your hot seat rankings. All right. Arkansas, Kentucky, Vanderbilt, Mercer. That should be a 5-0 stretch for Auburn. If you lose, which one of those games, if they lost it, would you say that was an okay loss? None of them. Those teams are terrible. They all have a bunch of question marks. And yes, I'm looking at you, Missouri fans. You guys are going to suck this year. You're going to be terrible. So I don't think you can excuse losing to any of those teams if you're Hugh Freeze. And that sets up what could be one of the best Iron Bowls we've seen in quite some time. Now, mind you, I remember 4th and 31, but there was nothing on the line in that game for Auburn. Come on, man. There was nothing on the line in that game for Auburn. I'm ready for an Iron Bowl where there's something on the line for both teams. I don't think we've seen that since like 2013. So give me that Iron Bowl. And the only way to get there is for Auburn to handle business after Georgia and win the next 5. If you're an 8-win team, you have a chance to get to 9 wins and possibly play spoiler for Alabama and keep them out of the college football playoff. If you're a 9-win team headed into that game, you have a chance to not only play spoiler, but potentially make the playoff while keeping Alabama out. The storylines for that one could be epic, Chris. So, yes, this schedule does present a great opportunity for Hugh Freeze in year 3. I think it's a blessing for him. I don't think he could have wished for a better schedule in year 3 than the one that he got. So take advantage of it now, because these cycles are going to come and go in this new SEC with 16 teams and no divisions. Eventually, LSU or Ole Miss or Florida or Tennessee, these teams are going to come back onto your schedule, man. So you got to take advantage of not having them on your schedule right now. Oklahoma, they've got a lot to prove. They've got as much to prove this year as Auburn does. I would say Venables is probably in the same boat Hugh Freeze is in right now. Missouri, Eli Drinkwitz, he's done more with less. But at the end of the day, it comes down to just having the dogs, man. Auburn went out and recruited them. Missouri hangs their hat on overdeveloping 3-stars. That never works long term. That always catches up to you, man. I'm telling you, the talent conversation always catches up. Look at the year Arizona State had last year. Great season with Cam Scatterboo and those guys. When they got to Texas, recruiting one, man. Quinn Ewers won. If you're Auburn, you got those dudes. Missouri didn't have those dudes. Arkansas didn't have those dudes. We damn sure know Vanderbilt and Kentucky doesn't have them. Did Oklahoma get that in John Mateer? Maybe. We'll see. Does Texas A&M have that? We know they got that kind of money. But is Mike Elko going to be able to get that out of them in year 2, in College Station? We'll see. If you're Hugh Freeze, you're in year 3, he's in year 2. You've got the 5 stars, and I'll end this with this. Chris, John Cohen, Auburn's AD, and Hugh Freeze have been trying to sell to the fans that they spent a lot of money retaining players over getting new players because they thought they believe that much in the talent that they brought in the first 2 years. They said, you know what? If we only have this much to spend, let's keep this team together. And let's win this year. And then we'll worry about recruiting later. Now, time will tell whether that was a good tactic or not. But, you cannot deny that they got to win now. That means taking advantage of this schedule. And quite honestly, I think they do to some extent. But the question is, are they going to be able to get that extra win? Are they going to get that signature win to get them over the hump? Are you going to beat that Alabama? Because on this schedule, I think Alabama, Georgia, and maybe Texas A&M could qualify as marquee wins this year.
Mm-hmm.
Those are your 3 opportunities at signature wins if you're Hugh Freeze. Maybe another opportunity arises better than we think. I don't think so. Baylor is borderline for me. It'd be a really, really good win to go in Waco and get that, especially game 1. I think, man, it just comes down to beating the top tier of the SEC. And right now, that's still Georgia. That's still Alabama to some extent, even though I think they got knocked down a peg in Kalen DeBoer's first year. And, that's potentially Texas A&M with all the talent that they brought in. So, we'll see.
Mike, that being said, the overall outlook of this season, it's really interesting because you mentioned all the talent Auburn has, and so much of the offseason conversation is about his job status and the hot seat. And so it kind of makes it almost, I don't know, it makes it hard, but it makes it very simple to quantify, like, what is success in year 3 for Hugh Freeze at Auburn. I think you and I probably put it best to give us some credit. If Auburn's not in the college football playoff conversation, they don't have to make it, but if they're not in that conversation come beginning in November, the season wasn't a success and something probably went wrong. And I think that's a fair standard to hold them to. And you've kind of mentioned it's got to be at least 8 wins. That feels like the standard, the expectation. If they go, we love to kind of make these stories. I mean, look at last year, right? Nobody got fired in the conference. Nobody. There was no coach movement at all. Is it a guarantee that if they don't get to that 8-win mark, if they're at 7-5, is it a guarantee you think Auburn's at least considering moving on, going in a different direction? If it's 6-6, obviously, or worse, does that likelihood increase? And then I'll ask you a second part of that question, Mike. If Auburn, if it's going to finally click and it all pan out in the Hugh Freeze era, and we're having those conversations about them, potentially making a college football playoff in November, in your mind, what is the one thing that has to click for that to happen?
Well, what does success look like? Let me answer the first question. It is 8 wins. And we had this argument on our show just last night, Chris, about 7 wins, 7 wins in a positive enough light. I think no. I think there's maybe you ever watch Avengers Infinity War where Doctor Strange gets a time stone and he goes in the future and Tony was like, did you how many scenarios did you see? 14 million. How many did we win? 1, right? Like Hugh Freeze might have one scenario where they win 7 games and they're not at least considering making a change. And I don't think they're going to have a choice. I think at 7 wins, show me 7 wins where at least one of those wins is in an inexplicable loss with this schedule. And so the other scenario that you painted, 6 wins. 6 wins, he should be out of here. At 6 wins, you got 2, maybe 3 inexplicable losses. No, thank you. Not with this talent. Accountability demands change at 6-6. What are you kidding me? 1 game better with all the money that was spent. He should be out here on the first thing smoking. Put him on the red eye. 6 wins, no thank you. And I think most reasonable Auburn fans would agree with me. In year 3, 6 wins, I don't even want to think about that. I don't think that's likely even. But if for some reason, I didn't think 5-7 last year was likely, but here we are. Less than that, I think we both agree he's definitely fired. At 5-7 again, you're gone. So success looks like 8 wins or more. At 7 wins, I want to reiterate, I don't think anything should be off the table. I don't think he's necessarily guaranteed fired, but man, I'm telling you, at the very least, we could all agree he would have the hottest seat in the SEC in year 4. And I'm talking about mid-season firing. if it's not going well halfway through the season, I'd fire him mid-season, man. Get an interim, make DJ Durkin your interim head coach, and consider hiring him full-time and getting him some offensive help. So I think that's the outlook for the schedule in terms of what is successful and offensively. What's the one thing they need to make it click? It's Jackson Arnold. This boils down to, do you have the right quarterback? Deuce Knight appears to be a guy, and I'll tell you, that might be one of the few things that saves Hugh Freeze, is he's recruited so well. If you get rid of him, you might see a lot of talent leave with him. And if you're Auburn, these are unprecedented levels of talent that you've had in the last 2 years. And Hugh Freeze is the architect of that. There's no way around that. So while he might not have gotten the most out of him the first 2 years, you got to give him credit for getting those guys to come to the Plains. And that could save him at 7-5. Is like, look, man, Deuce Knight appears to be the future at QB. And if you're Auburn, you have a golden opportunity to create a pipeline at quarterback where Jackson Arnold has a good couple of years on the Plains, hands the baton to Deuce, and then you go and you find the next guy. And what you're seeing at the better programs, Chris, is your Arch Mannings don't mind waiting behind guys like Quinn Ewers, because those are playing at an acceptable level that it makes sense. And then Arch is not worried about somebody coming in from the portal and taking the job from him. If you're Hugh Freeze, you have to create that sort of environment for Deuce and every quarterback beyond, where you bring in the next 5-star guy, he doesn't mind sitting a couple of years while Deuce is winning and playing at a high level, and then knowing he's going to be the next guy. But if you're always going to go out, and Hugh Freeze talked about the thing in the portal, at some point, it's going to be really, really hard to secure good high school recruits. And I agree with him. At some point, you have to lean into high school recruiting as the bedrock of bringing in high-level talent. And if you can do that, you have a chance to be good multiple years in a row. It feels like the opportunity to win championships comes in pockets. And I heard a national analyst on ESPN talking about this the other day. He said, the question about Ohio State was, did Ryan Day miss that pocket where, it's rare to be coaching that long and be in the conversation for championships that long without a fall off at some point. He finally got it done. Good for him. I think without a 12-team playoff, he might not have had that chance. But if you're Hugh Freeze, now you're in that pocket where you have a chance to be really, really good and deliver a season that could secure your job and your recruiting for years to come. So, but the key, it feels to me like he's bet his career at Auburn on Jackson Arnold. And if it's not Jackson, you have to pivot away from him before the season is lost. Right? So, how long is the leash going to be for Jackson if he's not playing well to start the season? Let's say he doesn't play well, but you still beat Baylor. How long do you see Hugh Freeze stick with Jackson Arnold? Does the wheels have to be falling all the way off the bus before he'll make a change? Or does he say, you know what, we haven't lost yet, but we're winning in spite of you and not because of you, so we're going to go ahead and make a change here?
It kind of feels like a minus the injury DJ Lagway situation from last year, where DJ Lagway Deuce Knight could come in and kind of be the saving grace, and you win 8 games, but there's a lot of optimism because you won with a young quarterback. So, from my perspective.
Look, I mean, the injury made it an easy decision, and they got lucky, right? Like that, it happened that way. But if Graham Mertz had stayed healthy, how long does Billy Napier stick with him before making the change? Now, to keep the job, nobody's going to fault Billy. You don't ever want to see anybody get hurt. In terms of making it an easy decision, that was the best decision for Billy Napier, was that he was making the change because of injury. And Hugh Freeze's case, man, if you've got healthy guys, but one isn't playing well, but you bet the farm on him so much so that you didn't have a competition. You didn't have a QB competition this spring. You told everybody Jackson Arnold was the starter from day one. So if he doesn't work out, will ego keep him from making that change? Will he go up in front of the podium after a terrible performance by Jackson and say, oh, it wasn't his fault? If you look at, is he going to make excuses for him? Or is he going to say, no, man, he didn't play well. We handed him the job. He didn't do it. And so this is why we recruited a high level, because it should be next guy up. I admire the coaches that can make the coaching change, the hard coaching changes, before it's a disaster, before it's all FUBAR. So we'll see.
That question and many more will be answered here in just a few short weeks as the Auburn Tigers get ready to take the field. One thing we know for certain, Mike Gittens, the War Rapport is the place to get all of your Auburn Tigers coverage, the best of the best when it comes to talking all things Auburn. Also, Locked on UCF does a great job. If you want to follow the Knights, Locked on UCF, the way to go with my buddy Mike Gittens. Mike, let folks know in case they've been living under a rock where they can check out all of your great work.
As you see it right there on the screen, Gittens on all social media platforms, at Mike Gittens _ on Instagram. We're at the War Rapport on every social media platform, TW Report on TikTok. And as Chris mentioned, go check out Locked on UCF. We are so close to 1,000 subscribers. That is a big milestone for any YouTube channel to hit that first 1,000 subscribers. We've done that in well under a year, so it's a great accomplishment. We need your help to get over that hump. But we're going to be bringing UCF fans lots of great Big 12 content this season as well.
Mike, you're the man. I appreciate you taking the time. Let's definitely do it again soon.
Thanks, Chris.